Tonight on CFTK-TV News, extreme cold hits the Northwest. Canada grapples with new tariffs and the impending effect, and a major milestone in the future of flight.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on this third day of February 2025. I'm Jaylene Matthews. It's been an international effort to grasp what the impact of U.S. tariffs would be, but that impact will now be delayed at least 30 days as Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump have come to an agreement. Trudeau said today that U.S. President Donald Trump will hold off on levying tariffs on Canada for at least 30 days after Canada made a series of commitments to improve security along the border. Trudeau says our country will be implementing a $1.3 billion border plan, reinforcing it with new technology and enhanced coordination with our American partners. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar and will list cartels as terrorists, says Trudeau, as well as launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. Trudeau says he also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and that the country will be backing it with $200 million. Here's CTV's Mike Lecouteur with more from earlier on the tariff showdown.
Tariffs are very powerful, both economically and in getting everything else you want.
The threat of those tariffs may have helped Trump get a deal with Mexico.
Tuvimos una conversación con el presidente Trump.
President Claudia Sheinbaum said the 25% tariffs are on hold after she promised to send 10,000 National Guard troops to her northern border to prevent the flow of fentanyl.
I have spoken to the General Secretary, who say that we should immediately get to work on this agreement.
As Mexico works on their solution, some Canadian politicians suggested following our North American neighbors.
Immediately deploy military troops, helicopters, and surveillance to the border to spot and intercept risks.
The Liberal government did announce a $1.3 billion plan to bolster security at the border, but Trump's grievances have grown beyond that.
Like, banks aren't allowed to do business in Canada. Canada is very tough. Canada is very, we're not treated well by Canada, and we have to be treated well.
In fact, U.S. banks do operate in this country. So with shifting messages from the president, Canada is focusing on retaliation. On the campaign trail, Doug Ford announced Ontario would rip up its $100 million contract with Elon Musk's Starlink.
Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying our economy.
The federal government is considering going one step further, saying procurement contracts could also prioritize Canadian firms.
A good share of them, about $250 million of contracts, or contracts to American companies, for which we are seriously considering the idea of applying a Canada First policy.
Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
Extreme cold is currently sweeping over BC's coast, bringing in both bitter temperatures and high winds. Environment Canada has posted an Arctic outflow and extreme cold warning for much of northern and north coastal BC. The wind chill value at the Dease Lake Airport reached -51 this morning, while those same temperatures were around -40 in Fort Nelson, Chetwynd, and Burns Lake. A reminder that any exposed skin is likely to result in frostbite at these temperatures. And in the world of local sports, the CIHL held several games at the end of last week that were all fairly one-sided. On Friday, the Hazelton Wolverines had an incredible showing by beating the Kitimat Ice Demons 19-1, and the Quesnel Kangaroos also had a convincing 5-1 win on their own versus the Williams Lake Stampeders. Saturday ended up being home to 3 different contests. The Prince Rupert Rampage got a 6-3 win over the Smithers Steelheads. The Terrace River Kings also fell victim to the Wolverines with a score of 7-3, and the Kangaroos pulled off another win by a score of 7-0 against the Nechako North Stars. And as the Terrace River Kings wrapped up their season, they will now get a lengthy break until they hit the ice a couple of weeks from now. Damian Smith from CFTK-TV has more.
Well, the season has come to a close for the Terrace River Kings of the Central Interior Hockey League, and once again, it was a successful one for the club. Finishing with a record of 16-2-0, they'll head into the playoffs as the number 1 seed, which includes a buy-in.
Back, that might be one of our best records. The league used to only have 14 to 16 games, so with an 18-game schedule, it's been our best season so far, and now we're looking forward to playoffs.
The River Kings are the team to beat in the CIHL, not only being at the top of the standings, but also they won the Lightning Cup trophy for the best regular season, the Cameron Kerr Cup as the playoff champions, and the Koi Cup, all in the year of 2024. And this was the first time the River Kings have won the Koi Cup, which is a trophy that is more than 100 years old.
Well, we've been pretty consistent the last 4 or 5 years. We made Koi finals 2 years ago, lost to Quesnel, and then we were obviously lucky enough to win it last year in Powell River. There are a lot of good teams in our league, so we just continue to just do our own thing, and you know, every game is important no matter who we're playing.
The team is coming off of a loss against the Hazelton Wolverines for this past weekend, but as Francoeur puts it, they could use a loss here and there.
The loss is maybe just a wake-up call for the team because it's our second loss of the year. Our first loss was in October, so sometimes it's a good thing for your team to, you know, face a little adversity ahead of the playoffs.
The CIHL playoffs will be starting this weekend with the Hazelton Wolverines against the Prince Rupert Rampage in the West Division, while the Williams Lake Stampeders and Smithers Steelheads will be battling it out in the East Division. The Quesnel Kangaroos have the other buy-in in the East Division, and the River Kings will play the winner of Hazelton or Prince Rupert. From CFTK-TV, I'm Damien Smith.
Coming up next, we take a look at the new tariffs and the resulting fallout. The Vanderhoof RCMP are seeking assistance in finding a missing man who was last seen on January 30th. Ronald McCook has been described as a 40-year-old, 5'11" and 200-pound Indigenous man that has black hair and brown eyes. He was wearing an orange t-shirt, a gray baseball hat, and jeans when he was last spotted. Anyone with information is asked to call the Vanderhoof RCMP or Crime Stoppers. The City of Prince Rupert has acknowledged that they have been hearing frustrations of Eastside residents that had been affected by water valve testing. The testing is part of the work that's being done by the city to replace their water pipes that have been less than ideal. Prince Rupert then said they're working to shore up their internal processes on water disruptions and plan on clarifying their procedures later this week. As we've seen, there are many areas in which these potential tariffs could hit us hard. But as CTV's Colton Prale explains, there's one sector that might get off easier.
Energy is a cornerstone of Canada-US trade, and it's not avoiding tariff troubles. But facing a lower 10% tax, it's the energy sector that could escape with the least damage.
It will not have a significant effect as it might represent in some other sectors. But it is going to raise the price of goods and services for people in the United States.
Energy made up nearly a third of Canada's exported goods to the United States last year, with the Americans buying 4.3 million barrels of crude per day. Experts say the 10% tariff could mean an increase of $6 per barrel. That means gas prices could jump 20 to 25 cents per gallon in the U.S., but the increase may not be enough to change consumer behavior. Good news for Canadian producers, but that price increase won't help pressure Washington to lift the tariffs.
And as long as demand stays about the same, then those refiners require our oil, especially in the Midwest, and they won't have a way to avoid it, so they're going to have to pay the tariff.
Meanwhile, Ottawa says energy is still a possible retaliatory tool.
Part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
Alberta Premier Danielle Smith continues to strenuously oppose banning or taxing energy exports, while producers say this is a warning Canada needs to diversify its energy industry to be more resilient.
We're vulnerable. We were that way because we chose to be that way because we were reliable partners. And that's no longer the case.
One worry is Enbridge Line 5. It carries oil from Western Canada to Ontario, but travels through Michigan. The concern is that if Canada does limit energy exports, the U.S. could turn off the taps to southern Ontario. Colton Prail, CTV News, Ottawa.
Turning to the weather, it's been a chilly few days in the northwest with continued Arctic outflow warnings in effect for the North Coast Central and inland, causing severe wind chill along with the freezing temperatures. And it's looking like that cold is expected to stick around for at least another few days. Environment Canada has issued a warning on the Arctic outflow, reminding us that frostbite and hypothermia can occur within minutes if adequate precautions are not taken when outdoors. Also, a reminder to make sure shelter is provided for pets and outdoor animals, and to store any outdoor objects so that they don't get tossed by the wind, causing injury or damage. On the north coast today, it's a clear and chilly -10 with a wind chill of -16 degrees. Tonight, winds gusting up to 50 kilometers an hour and between 90 and 110 kilometers an hour through mainland inlets and valleys, with a wind chill with a low of -13 degrees. In the Terrace area today, the weather is sitting at a mainly clear -15 with a wind chill low of -25 and winds up to 36 kilometers an hour. Tonight, winds gusting up to 60 and a wind chill near -23. In the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, it was sunshine today with wind chill of up to -34 this morning and -27 this afternoon. Tonight, clear, winds gusting up to 40 kilometers an hour and a wind chill low of -30. This week on the north coast, the sun will stay and so will the freezing temperatures for the most part, with overnight lows around -5. In the Terrace area, it'll also stay clear and sunny throughout the week and slightly colder than our north coast neighbors, with temperatures sitting around -7, overnight lows around -12. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, it'll be even colder and sunny as well. Residents can expect temperatures in the -13 to -9 range, with overnight lows around -16 degrees. Taking a look at highways around the northwest now. On the roads in the northwest today, watch for slippery sections and blowing snow along Highway 16. On Highway 37, be careful of slippery sections and blowing snow. On 37A, beware of slippery sections. There's blowing snow on Highway 118, slippery sections on the Nishka Highway, and slippery sections on Telegraph Creek Road. And this is what the roads are looking like around the northwest from the Drive BC cameras today. Still to come, a new warning on avoiding misleading media. It was recently announced by the City of Terrace that local crews will be upsizing the main sewer line leading into Terrace's sewage treatment plant. This work is expected to last for at least a couple of months and conclude sometime at the end of March. The Regional District of Kitimat-Skatine have launched a new survey. The district is looking to get information from local residents, businesses, and communities on how they all use compost. And as an added incentive, every resident in the area that ends up completing the survey will also become eligible to enter to win one of 2 Earth Machine composters or one of 2 rain barrels. The survey is available online via links on the district's website. In this age of ever-evolving technology, it's becoming more and more likely and common to get duped. As CTV's Judy Trin explains, keeping a lookout for altered or fake content must become the new norm.
Deciphering truth on social media is getting more difficult.
But the greatest threat, the one that I believe threatens the very existence of our democracy, is disinformation.
The commissioner's warning comes after investigating foreign interference. Shadowy states or individuals have the capability to weaponize artificial intelligence to undermine elections on a massive scale.
The deep fakes and the faked voices and the images of people that never really happened, that kind of generative AI tool can be used to create content that seems like it's real. It can be used to create chaos.
World leaders in a rock band, obviously fake, but others are not as easy to detect. After a visit by Pierre Poilievre last summer, hundreds of posts on social media surfaced praising Poilievre. They were not real people. The Conservatives say they don't use bots. Researchers later found that it was one person using artificial intelligence to train an army of bots.
You can imagine what a foreign government could do, or what a really nefarious actor could do, or a political campaign themselves could do.
Mr. Elon Musk.
Billionaire Elon Musk has posted about Canadian politics. His mother was born in Saskatchewan. His company X has more than 600 million active users. Musk fired the fact-checkers that removed wrong, misleading, and abusive posts. Now other social media companies, like Meta, are doing the same.
We are sleepwalking, I think, to what could be a very disastrous effect from an election that will be uglier than anything we've ever seen, where AI, deep fakes, bot technology is ramping up, and we are still living in the 1980s.
Parliament was considering two bills, one that offered Canadians some protection from bot networks and another that increased monitoring of political activity before elections. The legislation hit a dead end when Parliament was prorogued.
What can we do to stop it? Really not much. I mean, except question the information you're getting.
Turning to the markets now, Canada's main stock index closed down nearly 300 points. While the loonie fell to its lowest level in more than 2 decades, as Canadian exports to the United States faced sweeping impending tariffs. The Canadian dollar dropped by over half a penny, and the price of gold rose by $22. Oil rose by 60 cents, natural gas rose 31 cents, and aluminum was down $20. In Toronto, the TSX dropped 291 points. The Venture Index was down 235, and in New York, the Dow Jones was down 123 points and the Nasdaq down 235. Still ahead, a look back at the 2025 Grammy Awards. Thanks for staying with us. The Kitimat RCMP have shared their report on the lead up to the end of January. The report mentioned that Haisla Boulevard was closed down for a brief period. The closure happened due to reports of a vehicle catching on fire and officers determining that others' vehicles passing by would be too dangerous. Luckily, the fire was able to be eventually put out, and the passengers that were in the vehicle at the time managed to get out of it without suffering any injuries. An American startup reached a major milestone this week when it comes to the future of flight. Modern-day Concorde jets that could bring back an era of supersonic travel. Here's CTV's John Venevali-Rao with more.
And she's airborne. The historic high-flying moment took place over the Mojave Desert.
3 engines and afterburner, Mach numbers ticking up.
Ground controllers anxiously watching as a test pilot with U.S. startup Boom Supersonic opened up the throttle on a plane called the XB-1.
There we are. XB-1 is supersonic.
Breaking the speed of sound, something a civilian jet hasn't done in a generation.
It's time to scale up and to go build the version that you and I get to fly on.
It's been 22 years since the Concorde last flew passengers across the Atlantic at twice the speed of sound. Noisy and costly to operate, a deadly crash in 2000 contributed to the program's demise. But this is a 1/3 scale prototype of a jet moving us closer to a return to supersonic travel.
I don't think there's any question of whether passengers want faster flights. I don't know a single one who wants to spend more time on an airplane.
Sculpted for speed and safety.
The bigger version will be called Overture. Designed to carry up to 80 passengers, it'll be slightly slower than Concorde, but also quieter and cheaper to fly, going from New York to London in about 3.5 hours, half the time of a regular jet. The regulations could hold it back.
Today we have one of the silliest rules in the world, which is you can't fly supersonic over land, no matter how quiet the airplane is.
United, American, and Japan Airlines have all expressed buying interest, and a factory has been built in North Carolina. As for the test flight, comparisons are being drawn
The pilot, Captain Chuck Yeager.
to the moment Chuck Yeager became the first person to break the sound barrier back in 1947, also above the Mojave. Last summer, Boom's test pilot acknowledged such flights have risks, but said this.
We've got a really good team, really competent engineers, really smart people who designed it.
A plane they hope will carry passengers at supersonic speeds before the decade is out. John Venevali Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Last night, one of the most famed nights in music took place, the Grammys. Here's a recap of what went down at music's most glamorous night.
The biggest night in music featured flips, shock, and emphatic castle headgear. The 67th Grammy Awards at the Crypto.com Arena in Los Angeles featured all sorts of surprises Sunday night. One part that was expected, though, was the attention on Southern California as the area recovers from the devastating wildfires. You heard Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga singing California Dreaming there.
We are the world, we are the children.
And while singers from 2 local schools performed in shirts that said LA inside of a heart, Stevie Wonder also honored late producer Quincy Jones with a rendition of their 1985 anthem, We Are the World. The evening featured memorable performances from many of the pop stars like Sabrina Carpenter, who dominated this year's awards.
This is my first Grammy, so I'm gonna cry.
Carpenter took home a few awards, including Best Pop Vocal Album for her breakout LP, Short and Sweet. Chaperone electrified the audience atop a Pink Pony while singing Pink Pony Club.
My hat's gonna fall and it's gonna be okay.
Before winning Best New Artist with the second most memorable headgear of the evening.
Kendrick Lamar.
However, maybe it was most fitting that someone born and raised in Southern California win 2 of the evening's biggest awards, with Kendrick Lamar taking home Song of the Year and Record of the Year for Not Like Us. This is the diss track he released about Drake that the latter is now suing him for, but that's not what Kendrick wanted to talk about.
This is a true testament that we're going to continue to restore this city.
And in perhaps the evening's most emotional moment,
we are LA strong.
Los Angeles firefighters came on stage to announce what is widely viewed as the evening's biggest award, Album of the Year,
Cowboy Carter,
which went to Queen Bee herself for Cowboy Carter. She already had the most Grammys in history, but many felt it was about time that she won the most celebrated trophy.
I just feel very full and very honored.
That's our Northwest newscast for now. Thanks for watching. For more local news, visit cftktv.com or visit us on socials, YouTube, Blue Sky, and others.